On December 5, 1945, 5 Navy bombers took off from Fort Lauderdale into clear afternoon skies. 14 men were on board. It was a routine training flight. 2 hours later, the flight leader radioed that his compasses were not working. Then the transmissions grew confused. Then they stopped. A rescue plane with 13 more men went out to search. It vanished too. No wreckage from either aircraft was ever found. And for 80 years, people have asked the same question. What happened inside the Bermuda Triangle? You have probably heard the name before you ever heard the facts. A stretch of ocean between Miami, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico. Ships gone without a trace. Planes swallowed whole. No debris. No bodies. No answers. It sounds like the ocean itself is hiding something. But before you decide what you believe, you need to see what actually happened and what investigators actually found when they looked. Start with Flight 19, because it is the case that built the legend. The 5 TBM Avenger bombers left Naval Air Station Fort Lauderdale at 2:10 in the afternoon. The flight leader was Lieutenant Charles Taylor, an experienced pilot who had flown combat missions in the Pacific. But that day, something was wrong from the start. Taylor radioed that both of his compasses had failed. He believed he was over the Florida Keys. Navy investigators later determined he was almost certainly off course over the Bahamas instead. As the afternoon wore on, the flight grew disoriented, running low on fuel, flying in worsening weather as the sun went down. The final transmissions were fragments, then silence. A Navy Board of Investigation convened almost immediately. Their official report is where the sensationalized story and the documented one start to diverge. The board did not conclude that anything mysterious pulled the planes down. It concluded that Taylor became disoriented, that a chain of compass failure, bad weather, and dwindling fuel forced the aircraft down into the Atlantic at night, in rough seas, far from where searchers were looking. The report even initially listed the cause as cause unknown, largely because no wreckage was recovered to confirm the exact sequence. That single administrative phrase, cause unknown, is arguably the site from which the entire Bermuda Triangle legend grew. What about the rescue plane? The mariner that vanished while searching for Flight 19. Here the record is less mysterious, not more. A merchant ship in the area reported witnessing a mid-air explosion at roughly the time and location the mariner would have been flying. Mariner aircraft were known within the Navy for a specific hazard. Fuel vapor could accumulate in the aircraft's bilges, and a single spark from something as simple as a lit cigarette could ignite it. Investigators considered this the most probable explanation for its loss. Tragic, explainable, not unexplainable. So why does the Bermuda Triangle feel like a genuine mystery instead of a series of individually explainable accidents? Part of the answer is a writer named Vincent Gaddis, who coined the term Bermuda Triangle in a 1964 magazine article, stitching together disappearances that had occurred across different decades, different weather conditions, and different causes into a single ominous pattern. Later, authors expanded the list further, sometimes adding incidents that occurred outside the triangle's boundaries entirely, or omitting details like debris that actually was found, or weather conditions that were, in fact, severe. This is where one investigator's work matters enormously. Larry Kusche, a research librarian, spent years pulling primary source documents, insurance records, and original news reports on the most famous triangle cases. His conclusion, published in his 1975 book, was that many of the mysterious disappearances had mundane explanations once you actually read the original incident reports rather than the retellings. Ships some accounts described as vanishing in calm seas had, in the original weather logs, been sailing directly into recorded storms. Wreckage that popular books claimed was never found had, in several cases, actually been located and documented at the time. Consider the case often cited as the strangest of all, the USS Cyclops, a Navy collier that disappeared in 1918 with more than 300 people aboard, the largest single loss of life in U.S. Navy history outside of combat. No wreckage, no distress call, no survivors. It remains, honestly, one of the least explained losses on record, and the Navy's own historical office still lists the cause as unknown. Some researchers point to the ship's cargo of manganese ore, which can shift and destabilize a vessel in rough seas. Others note the Cyclops was already reported to have engine trouble before its final voyage. Neither explanation has been proven. This is a genuine unsolved case. It deserves to be treated as one, without pretending every disappearance in the region shares its mystery, because that is the deeper pattern once you look at the data as a whole. In the 1970s, the U.S. Coast Guard, along with the insurance market at Lloyd's of London, examined the actual loss rates for ships and aircraft in the Bermuda Triangle compared with other heavily trafficked stretches of ocean. Their conclusion, echoed later by federal agencies, including NOAA, was that the region does not show a statistically higher rate of unexplained disappearances than any other well-traveled oceanic corridor of comparable size. The Coast Guard has stated outright that it does not recognize the Bermuda Triangle as an area of specific danger. That is not the same as saying nothing strange has ever happened there. It is saying the numbers do not support a supernatural pattern. So what explanations do stand up to scrutiny? A few, and they are worth taking seriously precisely because they are boring compared to the myth. The region sits along the Gulf Stream, one of the strongest ocean currents on Earth, capable of rapidly altering weather and sweeping wreckage or life rafts far from a vessel's last known position before any search can begin. The area is also prone to sudden, violent tropical storms that can develop with little warning, especially before the era of satellite weather tracking. And there is a genuine, if narrow, magnetic phenomenon. The Bermuda Triangle is one of the few places on Earth where true north and magnetic north align, meaning compasses do not require the correction that navigators elsewhere are trained to make. A pilot or sailor unfamiliar with this quirk, relying on habit rather than instruments, could genuinely drift off course, particularly before modern GPS existed. One more theory deserves a fair hearing because it captures the public imagination, even though the evidence for it is limited. Some researchers have proposed that methane gas, escaping from deposits on the ocean floor in the form of methane hydrates, could reduce water density enough to sink a ship suddenly, or ignite in a way that could down an aircraft. Laboratory experiments have shown this is physically possible under very specific and extreme conditions. But there is no confirmed case where investigators found direct evidence linking a methane release to a specific Bermuda Triangle disappearance. It remains a theory, tested in tanks, not yet documented at sea. What you are left with, when you strip away 80 years of retelling, is not one mystery. It is a region with heavy maritime and air traffic, unpredictable weather, a strong current capable of erasing evidence, and a magnetic quirk that has genuinely confused inexperienced navigators. Layer that over a handful of individually tragic and occasionally still unexplained losses, like the Cyclops, and a compelling narrative was almost inevitable. Someone was always going to connect the dots. That does not mean every question has an answer. The Cyclops is still gone, and no one has ever definitively said why. Flight 19's exact wreckage has never been located. Despite decades of searching, absence of an answer is not the same as absence of an explanation. Sometimes the ocean simply keeps its evidence, and investigators are left with informed probability instead of certainty. Maybe that is the real reason the story endures. Not because the Bermuda Triangle is uniquely dangerous, but because the human mind resists an ending without a cause. We want the cause unknown box on that 1945 Navy report to mean something larger than a paperwork limitation. We want the missing wreckage to be evidence of something, rather than simply a testament to how vast and indifferent the ocean can be. The 5 bombers of Flight 19 likely went down the way so many aircraft do, disoriented, low on fuel, in the dark, in bad weather. The Cyclops likely sank, the way ships sometimes still do, suddenly and completely. But knowing that does not make the losses smaller. It just means the mystery was never the triangle. It was always you and everyone else, reaching for an explanation big enough to match the silence that followed.